Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cole Memo. Today is February 12th, 2025. It's just a little bit past 4:30 p.m. It's a snowy day here in Illinois. I hope you're all doing well, staying safe, staying warm. We're going to be covering a few different stories in today's episode. Why don't we just jump in to our first story with a newscast. It's always fun to watch a newscast, isn't it? Here we go. You've been hearing about this. 2024 breaks records for Illinois cannabis sales. Let's watch this report.
Just 5 years after legalizing adult use cannabis, the state of Illinois is touting the economic impact of a new and fast growing industry.
Our market has doubled in the last 4 years, which is pretty huge.
Erin Johnson is the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Officer for the state of Illinois. She says the industry is growing quickly but steadily, important for cannabis dispensaries and also for customers.
The price per ounce of cannabis is actually declining. We expect to see that in every market because as there's more supply, the prices are naturally coming down for consumers.
Currently, the state says there are 244 dispensaries in Illinois. Zenleaf is the retail arm of Verano. They say they started with 3 stores in Illinois in 2020, but have since expanded to 10.
The storefront has been an incredible opportunity for us to continue to bridge that gap. One, to help create a normalization in the conversation, but most importantly, right, to create a safe space for people to come in, purchase products.
The state says the total number of cannabis products sold in Illinois jumped 13% from 2023 to 2024.
This is America's next great homegrown industry, and so really the sky is the limit for us.
This homegrown industry creating a growing source of tax revenue for the state of Illinois.
Everybody in the state is benefiting from cannabis sales. We made about $490 million in tax revenue last year in 2024. So 35% of that goes into the general revenue fund.
As other states move to legalize adult use cannabis, the state says nearly 80% of cannabis purchases made here are made by Illinois residents. They say an encouraging sign for the stability of the industry here.
All right, very interesting report. We're going to segue to another report that I saw from the Chicago Sun-Times. And by the way, folks, we are live right now, so if you drop your comments below, I can display them on screen. Hello, Christopher Brady. Thank you for dropping a comment. I really appreciate it. If you're watching right now and haven't yet already, please hit that like button and subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll be able to be notified when we drop new videos and when we go live. So if you're sitting here wondering, why haven't I been able to check the live streams? Well, if you subscribe, that's the best way to get notified when I go live on the internet. All right, let's continue this story real quick. I'm curious what you all think about this. This is from the Chicago Sun-Times. We're talking about Illinois pot sales breaking records again, right? The Illinois legal weed business reached an all-time high in 2024, with the state reaping more than $2 billion in sales and nearly $500 million in sales tax. But the state's legal pot businesses continue to operate in the shadow of an unregulated Delta 8 and Delta 9 market that is siphoning an untold amount of taxes from state coffers. That's how this Chicago Sun-Times article opens up. They say despite that, the signs are mostly bright for the state's legal pot business, which has been growing since the drug was legalized in Illinois in 2020. As that report just noted, apparently the average price of bud has fallen gradually. Recreational sales grew 2.5% last year, with dispensaries logging 1.722 billion in sales. And although the medical market shrunk for a third year in a row, the state logged more than $490 million in sales tax from medical and recreational cannabis sales. I found that super interesting. We covered this story yesterday, and one of the things I didn't notice is that in Governor Pritzker's press release, he touted the record sales as showing the, quote, economic impact of a thriving cannabis industry. In that news release, he called out the, quote, unchecked market, end quote, of hemp-derived products for undercutting legal operators and, quote, flooding the industry with untested and potentially unsafe products. Definitely curious what you think about this story so far. People are Christopher Brady rhymes with daddy, so roll a fatty. That's what Christopher says. We're live right now. If you want to comment below, we can display your screens. You can also call into the show by going to colememo.com/live. You don't have to show your face if you don't want to. If you do, that's super cool. I'd be curious, what do you think about these stories? So, a loophole in the federal law, I'm continuing the Chicago Sun-Times article, legalized hemp-based variations of the drug that mimic the effects of marijuana. I'm just going to take a break from reading the article for a moment because that is an interesting description. I'll just say that. Continuing in the article, Pritzker tried to introduce a bill to regulate hemp, but it was killed before ever receiving a vote in Springfield. It actually passed through the Senate, taking a break from reading for a moment. It actually did pass through the Senate with nearly everybody voting for it except for one, Senator Preston. And no, that's not me. That's not me. I am Cole Preston. The senator was Willie Preston. So it did get a vote. It didn't receive a vote or even get called for a vote in the House. And maybe that's what the Chicago Sun-Times meant. Continuing in this article from the Sun-Times, saying she hopes lawmakers take up the bill again, Aaron A. Johnson, the state's cannabis regulation oversight officer, told the Sun-Times hemp is hurting the cannabis market. They say she said there's no estimate for the size of the state's unregulated hemp market. But the Illinois weed market continues to grow steadily between 2% and 6% a year, which Johnson calls a sign of strength. Critics say larger weed businesses have reaped most of the new pot revenue. Smaller businesses, mostly owned by Black and brown entrepreneurs who received licenses under the state's social equity applicant program, have been left in the dust due to unfair regulations, they say. I'm not sure who they is in this context. It's unclear to me if it's Johnson. Oh, I guess they're talking about critics. And I think they're quoting one here. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing Peter as a critic, but he's saying, quote, the strength of the market is only the strength of the multi-state operators. And again, that's a quote, the end of the quote from Peter Contos, the deputy director of the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition. I'm actually working with Peter to have him on the show in the future. So he's been on the show in the past, but it's always interesting to hear what the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition is working on. Once again, if you're watching right now, if you want to call in and share your thoughts, colememo.com/live. If you haven't already, smash that like button, hit subscribe. If you call in, you don't have to show your face. I'm curious to hear what you think about these topics. We're going to be moving on to our next story here in a moment, but just to wrap this one up, when Illinois legalized recreational pot in 2020, the state issued special licenses to people of color and others disproportionately affected by the federal war on drugs. The idea was to level the playing field and share the billions in pot revenue with the communities most hurt by previous policies that outlawed marijuana. Social equity applicants accounted for 65% of the licenses granted in 2023, but only 11.9% of all pot sales. I'm trying to think. Put another way. Yeah, I'll have to think about that in a second, but that's all according to a state-commissioned disparity study from 2024. Numbers provided by Johnson's office after the study was published show the percentage of adult use sales at social equity dispensaries had grown to 38% by December of 2024. So apparently those numbers came after the state commissioned study, which if you'd like to read that study, if you go to thecolememo.com, search up study, you'll be able to find it on my website. I'm just curious to do a little bit of math here. I'm really bad at mental math. Yeah, so that's what I thought the statistic they were referencing. So if you want to put this statistic another way, 88% of pot sales went to the original licensees. In other words, as they said, 11.9% of all pot sales went to social equity applicants. Curious what people think about this. I see some comments are rolling in. Be sure to comment below. We can display your comments on screen. Somebody says, would love to see you cover Georgia. All sorts of corruption to be unearthed. Yeah. I don't think I've talked much about Georgia. I've had somebody from Georgia on the show, but haven't really looked into Georgia. One reason social equity applicants are struggling, I'm continuing in the article, is because they're not allowed to sell medical marijuana, Peter Contos said. The Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition has pressed lawmakers in Springfield to allow this and to introduce anti-monopoly rules and prohibit other unfair business practices. This is a quote from Peter Contos. The numbers show it's brutal for the social equity folks to stay in business the past few years. They continue to have a difficult time, end quote. Everyone does not agree. Johnson said the rift between social equity license holders and multi-state operators has shrunk since the report was issued because of the delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the bill's requirement that the report be completed in a certain time frame. The study only accounted for when there were 6 social equity businesses, she said. Now, there are only 135 social equity license holders out of 245 total businesses licenses, Johnson said. In a quote, she said, "We know the gap is closing for sure as more people come online." That's the end of that quote. Hey, thanks for the heads up, Genetic Memory Farms. They're saying that YouTube notifications are always 10 minutes or more late. So I think the best heads up, this live stream was also not prepared. This is totally impromptu. I'm curious when I've scheduled it a few days in advance, like I did the other day, if the notification works any faster. But again, if you subscribe, you should get notified. And then when we roll out live streams, you can actually hit the notify me button and it'll send you an email, at least for sure, when our feed goes live. There's a few different ways. I'll try to get better about informing you of the ways that you can be notified since we're doing these live streams now. Once again, if you're listening right now, colememo.com/live if you want to call in. Would appreciate it. Yeah, if anybody wants to share their thoughts on these stories. So, prices falling, but taxes still an issue. Continuing in the Chicago Sun-Times article, more than 56 million cannabis products were sold in 2024, shattering the previous record in 2023 by 13%, according to the state. Prices are also falling on average in Illinois, but the state still has some of the highest legal pot prices in the nation. Johnson said weed prices are now comparable to other state programs as young as Illinois. Not exactly sure what she means by that, because Michigan, maybe there are a few other states that are as young as Illinois that have high prices like us, but Michigan is only a month older than us, and for the last 5 years, just for context, even though they've had lower prices and more competition, they've outsold Illinois every year, and I can share that data in a moment. Most definitely. I'll try to get that pulled up. But to continue in the article, Contos said prices remain high because of a state-imposed limited cultivation capacity. He tied the problem to the size restrictions placed on craft growers compared to the larger multi-state operators. Craft growers can operate up to 5,000 square feet, while the multi-state operators can expand up to 200,000 square feet. That's what Peter Contos said. Taxes are also an issue. The Chicago Sun-Times article continues, saying Illinois has double-digit taxes on legal weed, and it's pushing many consumers to Michigan and Missouri, which have a lower tax levy. This was a loose quote from Tiffany Ingram, the executive director of the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois. She said in a quote, "Taxation is a big headwind for us," end quote. She also said the unregulated hemp market is removing the incentive for legal cannabis business owners to stay in business. In a quote, she said, "There's no incentive for folks to adhere to a regulated market if you can open up a store with no oversight. What's the incentives to stay in the other market? You're starting to see cannabis operators going into the hemp space because, frankly, it's easier," end quote. Again, that's a quote from Tiffany Ingram, the executive director of the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois. I tend to agree with her on that. Why would you stay in the Cannabis Regulation and Tax, under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, with as punitive as it is and as easy as hemp is to operate in? And in many ways, hemp has addressed the complaints that cannabis licensees have about the Cannabis Regulation and Tax, about the market in Illinois, just to put it short. So you're starting to see, like she said, many licensees transition. This is a social equity brand, or this soda rather, is created by a company that has a social equity cannabis license in the state of Illinois. They're not the only ones that are doing it. Multi-state operators are getting into it, like GTI, Curaleaf, and several other big brands. You know, you've got brands like Wana gummies, which I would say are some of the most recognized gummies on the market. You know, people that don't even smoke weed can look at those gummies and be like, "Oh, those are those gummies?" Like it's Wana has in some ways become synonymous with cannabis gummies, which is kind of interesting. So I was trying to pull up the data that I referenced just a moment ago from Michigan. I know I shared it recently, but I can't remember where I shared it from. So while we're looking for that, feel free to drop your comments. I'm curious what you think about this story. Is hemp killing the Illinois cannabis market? One of the stories we're about to segue to is I actually made a post today on Reddit and Instagram and just asked people, what do you think would fix the Illinois cannabis market? And so I'll be sharing some of those responses in a little bit. But while we wait, if you have any ideas of what might fix the cannabis market, drop your thoughts. Would love to hear them. And I just found the data I was looking for. So again, the reason I'm showing this data is because in the article we just read, Aaron Johnson said we have comparable prices to Michigan, which we're getting there. We don't have comparable options. We don't have comparable quality, I would say. But if you look at these numbers, as I was saying earlier, even though Michigan has cheaper cannabis, they outsell us, and they've outsold us for the past 4 years. You can see that in 2024, Michigan got $3.3 billion, while we got a measly $1.57. In 2023, Michigan got another $3 billion, while we got just barely over $1.5 billion. We got $1.64. And I'll just stop with 2022 by saying in 2022, Michigan got $2.29 billion, while we got $1.55 billion. So they just have been blowing us out of the water the past 4 years, despite the fact that the weed is cheaper there. You'd think with, because these operators talk about, even in this article, how, and they've talked about it for years, how you don't want prices to get too low because then nobody will make money. Well, Michigan's making plenty of money. They're making more sales than we are. So we're getting some comments in. I'm curious. Somebody says, dispensary weed doesn't have fentanyl in it. So they also say they're recommending some brands. They say there's only 244 dispensaries in Illinois. Yeah. Yep. Interesting stuff. Somebody commented on Instagram. Let's see what they're commenting on Instagram. Which market, corporate or independent? Hemp helps the small guys, but it kills big locations. Hemp allows more market diversity to lift the restrictions and get more sellers on the market, in my opinion. That's what they say. Chai Mass says, back in the day, it wasn't about how much we made per unit. It's about moving volume. Yeah, and that's what Michigan's doing. That's what they're doing. They're certainly selling more weed than us and making more money while they do it, even though they're selling it for less, which is pretty hilarious. Once again, you can call into the show live by going to colememo.com/live. You do not have to show your face. I just wanted to give a heads up that tonight at, I think, 6 p.m., so it's going to be in about an hour, if you like a good old-fashioned debate about cannabis, well, you're in luck. I'll try to drop this in the chat for the people on YouTube. Can't really do the same thing for the people on Instagram, but I'll grab this link really quick. Tonight, Luke from Smart Approaches to Marijuana, which is not exactly what it sounds like if you've never heard of them. Smart Approaches to Marijuana is a prohibitionist group. They've been on my show several times. If you'd like to see the episodes that they've come on my show, you can see most of them at colememo.com/Jordan, like Michael Jordan, or Jordan Davidson, which is who I had on my show. That's COLEMEMO/JORDAN. I've had the people from Sam on the show several times. They don't agree with me. I don't agree with them, but we still have a good time. Yeah, it looks like they're going to be live in 64 minutes at 6 p.m. Central Time, February 12th. I'll drop this link in for the people watching on YouTube. This will probably be a good one. They're debating Martha Bueno, who has also been on this show. So Luke has been on the show. Martha has been on the show. Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be a good one. They're calling it the Great Cannabis Clash. So Martha, I would say, is a lot closer to, at least through my conversations I've had with Martha on the topic of cannabis. Oh, look, they just added an image. Added a new image to the YouTube. I don't know if that just changed or what. Maybe I'm just high. Anyways, though, Martha is a lot closer to, I would say, my thought and approach to cannabis regulation, at least from what I've heard. Luke is not. Luke believes cannabis should not be legal. Somebody commented and said, I've had Michigan weed and it was okay. Well, I think I get that. I've gone to different states and had just okay weed, but if you really look, you'll find some good weed. And that's what's great about the Michigan market, is that you have plenty of options. As a result, though, you're going to have options that you've never heard of, aren't anything to speak of, and you may never try again. But when you find options that stand out, you're going to remember them, and you will buy them again. And this is not a unique experience. Go to the liquor store or the grocery store. There's going to be a lot of products that you've never heard of, bottom of the barrel products, because there's just more options to choose from, right? You know all the brand names you love, but go to the liquor store and actually take a look. There's a lot of bottom, mid, and top shelf products, and I think that's a good thing. It allows people to compete and find their own audience. And I guess if I could just relate this to cannabis, I would say, as a consumer, and this is why I love markets like Michigan, where you do have plenty of choice. As a consumer, I want to be able to vote with my dollars legally, but I can't do that until everyone's on the ballot. Michigan allows more people to be on the ballot. Illinois simply doesn't. That's why I'm critical of what Illinois has done. With all of that said, I'm very proud of what Illinois has done, because I would not be sitting here live on YouTube smoking weed, cheers, if it weren't for the progress that Illinois has made. So like, kudos, we've made some definite progress here. But to pretend the job is done would, it's far from over. So we've got some other comments coming in. I like fresh weed. Me too, man. Me too. That's why you got to find a good vendor in Michigan. Honestly, some of the best weed you're going to find is not from a dispensary. It's from a caregiver. Pro tip. They say I stay legal in Illinois, not bringing that back with me. Yeah, I hear you on that. That drive back through Indiana is a scary one. Someone says homegrown should be a right in Illinois, not a permission. I think it's the most blatant defiance of common sense and an obvious cash grab. How is a truly sick person supposed to afford or get weed? Drop your comments below. I'll read them. I'm going to keep reading them. I also want to remind you can go to colememo.com/live and you can call in and share your thoughts. You can do it from your phone, your computer. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to. Yeah, just offering if people want to call in. We had a few callers the other day. It was a good time. We're about to transition to our next story, which is we're going to start off with a video. Drop your comments, folks. I'm going to read some more, and then we will get this video started. Someone's saying, excited to see hemp completely wash the idea of cannabis regulation and double down on everything Cole's saying here. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, look. If you go back and listen to my podcast, even before I started calling it the Cole Memo podcast, I've been complaining about these regulations for years, and my friend just said it last night on our last episode. So if you want to watch some more of my content, check out our most recent episode from this. My friend was just saying last night, we have been complaining for years about these regulations, how burdensome they are on operators and consumers, which is like where we speak from perspective-wise. I have no aspiration to be in the business. I've never wanted to. I always make the joke that I used to sell weed when I was in high school. It's true. I did, but that's all of my industry experience. When I was a high school student, I sold weed to my friends for about 3 months. Didn't make any money. Smoked more. I didn't follow the rule of don't get high on your own supply. In fact, I got very high on my own supply and did not make money. But oh, hey, Simply Herb, thank you. They said they subbed. Thank you. Yeah. Interesting stuff. I don't know how I got off on that. Oh, yeah. They said, hemp has completely washed the idea of cannabis regulation away. It's really flipped all of these things that I have complained about over the years, and others. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that like I'm the only one that's been saying this. I think there's a lot of parallel thought going on here. I've definitely heard other people with really great ideas. I've been inspired in many different ways and influenced in many different ways. But the bottom line is I've always complained. I always reference my first trip to Colorado when I try to explain what I'm about to explain. I went to Colorado when I turned 21 and 21. I hope people understand that reference. If not, they're just like, why'd you do that? When I turned 21, I went to Colorado and wanted to buy some weed. Got in there, was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, I want an ounce of that. I want an ounce of that. Give me some of those edibles. And they're like, whoa, buddy. You are already way over your limit. And I was like, my limit? What the fuck are you talking about? I thought this shit was legal. And they're like, nah, bro, you can only buy this much and you can only have this much. And I was like, can I just like buy this and come back in and buy more? And that store said no, but I ended up finding other stores that told me yes. So I could do what was called looping back in the day. Anyways, that was my first experience with legal weed. I'm saying that in air quotes. And it just felt silly. What are you talking about? I can't go to the store and buy as much as I want. Like, is it legal if I can get in trouble for having a certain amount of cannabis? Is there any such thing as too much cannabis? Simple concepts like that I just started to question, what are these fucking regulations on this plant? When you tell people they can't grow cannabis or they can only grow a certain amount, it just seems silly. Now, I will say I'm aware of the fact that there are some home brewing rules that stipulate, from what I understand, and maybe it's different from state to state, some limits on how much you can brew at home. But from what I understand about that, you would not be consuming that much in a period of time. And that's the issue. These cannabis regulations are so arbitrary, so tight, like the amounts that you can buy or the amounts you can grow or possess. They're tiny amounts. Like what, sometimes I like to go to Sam's Club or Costco and buy in bulk. What's the big fucking problem with that? And again, just to wrap up that rant, hemp has overturned everything. All of those complaints, it's flipped the table. I can buy as much as I want. I can have as much as I want. I can get it shipped to my house. I can buy it with my credit card. I can get it shipped across state lines. I can bring it across state lines. I don't know if I said it already, but there's no possession limit. I can have as much as I want. I can load up my backpack with sodas. In fact, I did that at the premiere of my mini documentary, which you can stream now at colememo.com/minidoc. I brought in a whole fucking cooler of sodas for everybody that showed up. Had to have been like 100 sodas, thanks to the folks at River Bluff Collective. They provided a bunch of these sodas of different doses and everything, and just said, Cole, feel free to give them out for free. If I would have tried to do that with somebody from a dispensary, that would have been such a fucking complicated process. And from what I've heard, the way that they do that, like the way that they do events like that, is they like have people go and purchase their amount and then go, have another person go and purchase their amount so that they can host some of these events. But anyways, I didn't have to worry about any of that shit with hemp. Just gave it out. People took home some 4-packs, right? Anyways, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. We're about to segue to the next show. We are live, so comment below. We can display your comment if you noticed I'm responding to comments. You can also call in at colememo.com/live. I think some other comments have come in. Someone said, need to hit that thumb if we are going to get the algorithm to put Cole in front of a wider audience. Yeah, if you can hit that like button, it helps more people see this, and maybe we can get this discussion going better. You know what I mean? Or at a larger scale. Someone says, it is silly. Someone else said, taking a dab for this preaching service right here. Thank you for saying this, Cole. Thank you. They said, happy hempin'. Hempin' ain't easy. I heard somebody say that recently, and it's kind of funny. Jackie Heim said, hello. Hey, how's it going? Got any comments on Instagram? Doesn't look like we have any comments on Instagram. That's all right. All right, well, curious if you have any other thoughts about the state of cannabis. Again, I'm about to segue into talking about, I made a post on Reddit and Instagram asking people, what do you think would make the cannabis market better? I'm curious, people that are watching right now, what do you think would make the cannabis market better, or any cannabis market better? I mean, we just talked about a lot of different ways, but I'm just curious if you have any ideas, any bases I feel, or that you feel I didn't touch. Curious, what would make cannabis better for you? And let's watch this small clip while you guys are cocking up your replies. This is some breaking news out of Illinois.
This is a historic conviction.
Acting United States Attorney Morris Pascal after a jury reached a verdict in the trial against former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan. Madigan was convicted of conspiracy, bribery, and wire fraud in a split verdict in his high-profile corruption trial. The jury convicted him on 10 counts, acquitted him on 7, but couldn't reach a decision on 6 counts. The jury deliberated more than 10 days. Madigan was Speaker for more than 3 decades and once led the Democratic Party of Illinois. The The 23-count indictment accused Madigan of using his influence to pass legislation favorable to utility companies that doled out kickbacks, jobs, and contracts to his supporters.
All right, super interesting stuff. I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts. Let me get that off the screen. I'm not giving that tax company any free advertising. What you doing? Interesting story out of Illinois. I will share a few photos that were taken outside of the courtroom, and then I'm going to get back to the subject of what would make the cannabis market better. Some good photos from the Chicago Tribune of Michael Madigan going into the courtroom today. There's Michael McLean, who notably, according to reporting by the Chicago Tribune, was formerly a lobbyist for Green Thumb Industries. And according to their reporting, I believe it was the Tribune's reporting, Green Thumb Industries, still at least at the time of their reporting, was hiring former Madigan lobbyists. So, smart move, I guess, if you want to get some things done or not done in Springfield. I saw this photo. I couldn't tell if this was Michael Madigan driving away. I asked the person that shared this, and they haven't responded to me yet. But it looks like that's Michael Madigan driving away. And the reason I am even sharing that is because I'm like, he drives? Not saying he's too old to drive. I'm just saying he's Michael fucking Madigan. Why he's driving? So let's get back to the topic of what would make the Illinois cannabis industry better for consumers and industry participants. I'm curious what you think would make better, if you have a top 5 or 10 changes. Some examples that I came up with are repealing state-level license moratoriums, because I don't know if you knew this, but localities are allowed to set license moratoriums. Like they can decide, we're going to only have 10 restaurants in town and 5 bars. Localities have the right to do that, and they do. I went to Evergreen Park, for example, which is a village, I believe, in Chicagoland, and I learned that they have limits on smoke shops, limits on different types of businesses. And the reason I think that we should repeal a state-level license moratorium is because they seem redundant. Like some of these people with the limited licenses can barely find a locality that will accept them, or they have some trouble. Moving on from that, I think decriminalizing possession completely, home grow for all, allowing deli style and farmers market sales. I think those would be some really, really nice improvements. Let's read some of the comments that have come in, and be sure to drop your comment. Once again, we are live. If you want to call in, you can. colememo.com/live. Be sure to smash that like button if you're enjoying it. If you're enjoying this live stream, subscribe so you can be notified for more. I saw a comment just came in. I will get to that. One of the first comments I'm showing on my screen, somebody said, make all dispos medical. It's literally all the fucking same. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if you knew this, but yeah, if you go to one of the 55 medical dispensaries, and I asked this of a licensed operator, I said, look, if I see anything on your adult use menu, can I buy it as a medical patient? And they said, well, first of all, Cole, there shouldn't be anything that's on our adult use menu that's not on our medical menu. But yes, absolutely. If you see something on our adult use menu that isn't, point it out to us and we can make sure that you can purchase it as a medical cannabis patient. At the time, the reason I was asking that is because with these new craft operators coming onto the market, some people were being told they couldn't buy a craft product because it was an adult use product. And I was like, well, what the fuck are you talking about? I was told anything on either menu I can purchase. It turns out it was a point of sale issue, which is actually what I think I hypothesized, because at the time, from what I could gather, it was an error related to Dutchy, which is a seemingly popular point of sale, from what I understand. So, some comments have come in. People say, I think the state of cannabis is being treated like a commodity, not like a medicine. We legalize patients to sell it to the public, yet patients have been forgotten in the conversation. Somebody dropped their list. They say, 1, Illinois needs a caregiver program that allows us to grow for others. 2, Illinois needs to make manufacturers donate a certain percentage to qualifying patients. Somebody else said, quit taxing cannabis at 25 to 40%. I want to get back to that comment about Illinois needs to make manufacturers donate a certain percentage to qualifying patients. I think it was this person that made this comment last night that said that apparently this is the case for pharmaceutical drugs in Illinois. Can you comment maybe and tell us more about that? Or if you're able, call in at colememo.com/live. Once again, if you want to call in, you can do that, colememo.com/live. You don't have to show your face. It's chill. Anyways, to keep moving down the list, some people say the exact same thing as the other comment that we just displayed. Getting rid of the THC percent tax. No reason someone needs to pay 42% tax for 1 gram cart. I understand the tax for it and even having a city tax, but being taxed more or less depending on how much THC is in my product is crazy. They also say maybe make the dispos not full of retail drones and have them not look like a prison either. I was saying last night that when you go into a dispensary in Illinois, it feels like you're going through TSA. You're like, oh shit, I was supposed to take off my belt buckle. My bad. Can I keep my shoes on? Like, what do I need to do? It feels like you're going through TSA. You're like, shit, do I put my bag here or not? My bad. You're getting yelled at. It feels like you're always getting yelled at the dispensaries. Versus when you go to like a shop in Michigan. Like I went to this shop in Michigan. While I was waiting in the lobby, they were literally like, hey bro, you want a cup of coffee? And I was like, I mean, sure. It's been a long ride here to Michigan. It's going to be a long ride back, long day. Might as well get a cup of coffee. This commenter says, I'd love to see expanded home grow rules, farmers markets for growers, deli-style dispos would be a huge improvement. Yeah, interesting suggestion here. Somebody says, disband the limited license market. Hell yeah. Power to the people. Establish antitrust laws for MSOs. I just want to say really quick, MSOs has become like a bad name. And I think like the goal of any business person is to become, whether you're in cannabis or whatever else, have your product on sale everywhere, not just in your locality. So I think really what they want is establishing antitrust laws for corporate cannabis, because you can be a small business and be a multi-state operator. You can be a good business maybe and be a multi-state operator. Correct me if you feel I'm wrong here. Once again, you can call me at colememo.com/live. Would love to have anybody jump on. They continue their list. Expand medical patient access. Curb the artificially inflated and absurd base prices and taxes. Give consumers an opportunity to assess quality before purchasing. That's a big one. You have to take a leap on a lot of the products you purchase in the Illinois cannabis market. Once again, if you're tuning in live right now, we're talking about what would make the Illinois cannabis market better, or from wherever you're from, Definitely open to suggestions from anybody, anywhere. Drop your comments below. We can share them on the screen. We've been going through comments. So another person saying deli style would change the game for Illinois. Pricing would be effective in a positive manner for the consumers. Fresher product offered, and the overall experience and the vibe is unmatched. Getting to interact with the product before committing to purchase is some emoji that my computer can't tell. Sorry. Maybe they were saying fire. I don't know. Anyways, I tend to agree. I don't know where it is, but somebody else, there's a little conversation somewhere in here. And people are talking about deli style, and they basically say, you know, one of the downsides to deli style is that the weed can get dry. Somebody messaged me with a funny comment. They're like, the weed's already dry in Illinois, which I thought was funny. But the key to deli style, I would say, if you're going to do deli style and you want to preserve fresh product, would be to have a sample jar. So you got your big jar, or it doesn't even have to be a big jar, just a jar with enough nugs to be representative of what you would buy, not only in physical like appearance, but smell, you know. And as soon as it gets stale, grab a few more nugs, add it to your show jar. That way you don't have people sticking their faces in your weed. Have you ever been to those dispensaries and see the people in line in front of you, and the bud tender pushes the jar of weed across the counter, and big sweaty person just shoves their face in it? We've all been there. I would say a good dispensary wouldn't do that, because whenever I see dispensaries do that, I honestly get out of line. Somebody just commented, said, that's the part that always got me, LOL. And look, don't get me wrong, I've been buying weed before it was legal, and so, you know, my friends, though, would employ similar techniques. They would have a show bag. They would bring you kind of samples to choose from. And depending on how much you wanted, then you would get, you know, it weighed out from a larger jar. Stuff from the traditional market, you know, these, yeah. Anyways, somebody commented, insulin is a good example. We were talking about earlier that one of their ideas was that Illinois needs to make manufacturers donate a certain percentage of product to qualifying patients, and they made the point that apparently we do this for other pharmaceutical products, and I guess insulin is an example, like providing other social services, nonprofits vet patients for need. Then the organization will receive insulin donations from manufacturers like Eli Lilly, etc. Interesting. Someone says, but they have screens now that cover the jar like a mesh. Yeah. That's better, I guess. I still think the solution is just to like have a small jar with like a few nugs that are representative of a batch. Let people put their face in it, I guess. But if I like smell it, like I should be able to, as a consumer, if I'm like, is there just nothing to this? Like if it says the jar's been out for a week, like there should be like some sort of protocol where the store's like, yeah, that might be like stale. Maybe we add new weed to that, you know? Anyways, I think you guys get my point. Curious what other people think. We just got a comment. Cookies in Illinois, former Bloomington employee. So this person that's commenting, it's Jackie. I think she's been on the podcast before and helped me screen my mini documentary to Illinois State University. Thanks again for that, Jackie. She says, as a former employee of Cookies in Illinois, they have smell jars, but it's expensive to keep up on it because the state mandates the product be destroyed after a week. It's costly to maintain. Yep, I have heard similar things. And yeah, if in case people didn't know, I've posted a picture in the past, but Illinois does allow you to have smell jars like I'm talking about, which is pretty cool. But like Jackie is saying, it's expensive. What Jackie didn't mention, which I'm sure, Jackie, please comment if you agree with me. What happens with this, because Illinois is a super dry state, especially this time of year, those smell jars have to be destroyed after a week, because by the end of the week, they're fucking dry as shit. I mean, the weed is already sort of dry, and then it being exposed to open air just takes it the rest of the way. I'm curious what Jackie thinks. That in other words, what I'm saying is those sample jars are great at the beginning of the week, but by the end of the week, yeah, they basically not only literally the state mandates the product be destroyed, but I'm sure by the end of the week you would want to destroy it anyway, whether it be in your bong or via the state-approved method. Another comment says med license for all dispos, deli-style drive-thrus, home delivery, and lower taxes. Yeah. Somebody said, and by the way, if you're tuning in live and you're not sure what we're talking about right now, what would make the Illinois cannabis market better? Somebody said, for the state to be competitive with other states in the area. I'll keep driving to Michigan every 3 months until then. Somebody just commented and said, talking about what will make the market better is pointless. The system is rigged and very few care. If they did care, they wouldn't support the licensed companies in Illinois to the tune of $2 billion a year. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I disagree with the first part that you said, that talking about what will make the market better is pointless, because then you're basically calling my entire podcast pointless, which actually may be true. That may be pretty well true. But jokes aside, I don't think it's pointless because, you know, I haven't released these interviews, but to your point, really quick, to your point, some people don't care and don't even know. I've done these interviews with, and I need to release them, with just random consumers outside of a dispensary. And I just ask them, like, have you ever shopped at a dispensary before? The answer is usually yes. Where? The answer is usually like Colorado or Michigan or some other vacation location. Vegas. And I ask them, how do the prices compare? And depending on where they've shopped, a lot of times what people say, if they've shopped in Michigan or Colorado, is like, man, Illinois is so fucking expensive. And what's interesting about these consumers is, to your point again, they don't, I don't know if it's if they don't care, but I think some of them don't know, and they don't have enough time to like look into all this shit. Because I'll show you this graphic here that I think makes it confusing for people. I'm going to go to boxbrown.com/MSO-maps. I think that's, yeah. So this is going to be a little bit out of date. I'll share my screen. But if you look at these brands and how they structure them, right? So here's Canopy Growth Corporation. And you'll see some brands you might recognize, like Superflux, they're in Illinois. Acreage Holdings, The Botanist. You probably, Stores and Bickle, the people that make the vapes. They're in Illinois. Jushi, which has Beyond Hello, which used to be in Illinois, I believe. I'm not sure the presence of Jushi anymore, but to get to some Illinois ones that you might recognize, this is where it gets a little bit out of date. Let's just ignore this bottom section. You've got Cresco Labs, and then under them, you've got Good News, you've got Cultivate, Sunnyside, Remedy, Bluma, Mindy's, Floromedics, like High Supply. And I don't think some people are able to put together how all these companies relate to each other. And actually, when they go in and see the shelves and see all these different options, they assume they're all from different companies. And it gives the illusion that there's this like big competitive market, I think, to a layman in Illinois. And so, again, back to your point, I don't think it's not so much that they don't care. I think it's that they don't understand. But to wrap up my thought here, what's interesting, when I have interviewed consumers outside of the dispensary, some of them are able to put their finger on it. They're like, something's wrong. Like there's not enough choices. The prices are all too high, and they've been high for the last 4 years. They've not really budged much. And it's like some people are like waking up to it and they can like almost feel it, but they don't know how to verbalize it. They just don't spend as much time, I think, as maybe you or myself looking into this and studying why the market is the way that it is and all these other things. So I really appreciate your comment because I actually feel this way sometimes. I do feel like talking about it will make it pointless. Sometimes it's like depressing and I don't want to do the podcast anymore because, you know, it doesn't feel like we're making any ground sometimes. But I do think it's important to put on the record like how we feel about these things and try to at least have conversations with people about how we can change things. Once again, we are live right now. You can call in at thecolememo.com/live. You don't have to turn your video on if you don't want to. Please, if you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe. I'm going to keep going through comments that have flowed in. Somebody said the jars are nearly sealed, so the bud could last a tad longer. Oh, that's cool. We were talking about the sample jars, and I was saying that they may not last very long. They may get dry quickly, but this person with their experience is saying the jars are nearly sealed. So the bud could last a little bit longer than what you're allowed to keep it for. This commenter said the idiots have spoken and they keep buying from these shitty companies. I agree. Jackie followed up and said, I would argue that some of us industry workers are trying to change the system from the inside. And this Just Nick DJ followed up and said, I love what you do. I'm just frustrated at people's response to the market. I agree. I could sense that. I understand. Jackie said, your podcast is informative. I appreciate your willingness to educate others about the industry. Thank you. I appreciate you tuning in and always being supportive and doing what you do for the community. Somebody commented on Instagram and said, let me join the live. All you got to do is go to colememo.com/live. Just go to colememo.com/live and you can join. The person that's commenting on Instagram, I think they might have sent me like a request to join my live on Instagram. You got to go to colememo.com/live. It's super easy. In fact, Miggy, who just commented and said, yo, smiley face, he joined me the other day. Super easy to do. Here's another comment that flew in. They say, I think Michigan has the vibrant and thriving market now because they had a caregiver program that allowed people with talent and expertise who cared to flourish with the patients who really needed them. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, one thought I have about home grow and a caregiver market is that oftentimes some of these big companies have been, you know, alleged to have opposed it. Some definitely have. If you go back through my podcast feed, I've gone back and forth with some of these companies on home grow and why they should support it. I think they should look at it like you would look at think about like people, I don't know, maybe that was a stupid example. I was about to say like, you know, all of the singers that have just been like found on the internet, you know, if you just post a video and sing. Back in the day, some might argue like, well, you were supposed to go through a record label to put your music and whatever. And it's like, oh, hey, somebody just joined. Well, I'll add you here to the phone call in just a second. We have a caller on the line. We'll join them and have them join in just a second. But I wanted to try to complete my thought here. And I don't even honestly know where I was going with that now because I'm high. But they should look at it as like talent acquisition, right? If you allow more people to grow at home, if you allow more people to showcase their wares, showcase their skills, you can acquire that talent and your company can be somebody that grows the best weed. Like, I think these companies are looking at it wrong. They're looking at it like, if we let everybody grow at home, then they're going to steal all of our customers. It's like, no, you can acquire that talent, pay them for what they're worth, and have your company have the best weed ever, right? So we're about to add our caller to the line. Someone said, Cole Memo is a much needed podcast for Illinois. Thank you again. Thank you. Someone said, that's what I think. People should look at it like Jungle Boys, where they sell their cuts. I'm not familiar. Matt, I'm about to add you to the call. Welcome to the Cole Memo, dude. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Got any thoughts you wanted to share? Right now, we were talking about what would make the Illinois market, the Illinois cannabis market better. If you have any thoughts on that, or if you just were joining for any other reason, feel free.
So there's a few things that I want to add to that. Is that they definitely have a monopoly kind of on the state. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Um, I work in the cannabis industry. It's kind of all the same stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you on that. Any other thoughts? I'm pulling up a video that'll kind of underline your point, I think. But
Just
while I pull that up, any other thoughts?
About the home grow bill, I think that's a really good thing, especially as like being a felon myself. I would say 90% of the companies in Illinois, even the ones that act like they're so-called like caring, they don't even hire felons. Like even if your felony is just for cannabis, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, that is pretty nuts. I'll find this video here in a second. Yeah, that home grow bill, I'll have to, if people aren't sure what we're talking about, I covered it on yesterday's show, but it's worth talking about again. Rita Mayfield, if people are familiar, Representative Rita Mayfield submitted a bill that would not only increase the number of patients a caregiver could have, but it also would increase the number of plants a medical patient could grow from 5 plants to 12 plants. Pretty interesting stuff, huh?
I was reading also about it's going to increase, let felons be caregivers, correct?
Yes, I believe that is also true.
And then, you know how the plant count is going to work for that? Like, is it just going to be still 12 plants across the board, or is that going to be 12 plants per patient since it's 10 patients as well?
12 plants per patient, and I don't get the impression that, just talking to people that are pretty involved with it, I do not get the impression that caregivers will be allowed to grow for medical patients. Although I do have something to say about that as well. Definitely remind me on that. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just found the video I wanted to play. But let's see here. Give me a second. I'm sorry, I'm multitasking here. I will pull up just so that people can see the bill that we're talking about. This article is available at thecolememo.com. It's House Bill 3498. It was introduced on February 7th, 2025. And it's 12 plants per household. Back to your question, rather than 5 plants. And you know, you asked about, or you mentioned caregiver cultivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the CRTA, there's language that says authorized agent. I'll pull this up for people if people want to see it. So if you didn't know, the CRTA is the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which is effectively what made adult use cannabis decriminalized here in Illinois. It also allowed states, or sorry, the state. I thought I was displaying my screen earlier. My bad.
Is it the same thing as the DOA badging, like for employees, or is that different?
Yeah, I believe all of that stuff is under the CRTA. Basically, the long story short, most people say the CRTA is what legalized cannabis in Illinois. And so if you look up the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, you can see the bill. And I'm going to go to view the entire act, and then I'm going to do a Control F, which is a find command, and I'm going to search up 5 plants. So I'll make this text bigger so that people can read. An Illinois resident, and this is how the law is today. This isn't with that new bill we were just talking about. This is just how it is today. An Illinois resident, 21 years of age or older, who is a registered qualifying patient, may cultivate cannabis plants with a limit of 5 plants that are more than 5 inches. So back to your original question, I think it's now going to read 12 plants that are more than 5 inches. And then the big thing that I wanted to show you, because you kind of asked about caregiver growing.
Yeah.
Again, this is how the law is today. It says cannabis plants may only be tended by registered qualifying patients who reside at the residence or their authorized agent attending to the residence for brief periods of time, such as when the qualifying patient is temporarily away from the residence. So my question has been, who is the authorized agent? Because again, if you read this sentence, like, okay, I'm a qualifying patient, so based off of this sentence, I can tend to my plants, right? Mm-hmm. Because I reside at my residence. But when you use the word or, that implies that somebody else can tend to my plants. Now, who is that? Apparently, it's the authorized agent. What does that mean? Well, if you do a search of authorized agent, it's only mentioned twice in the law, mm-hmm. and it is not defined. You know, I would think authorized agent equals caregiver, but I didn't want to make any assumptions, so I reached out to the state of Illinois. Mm-hmm. And the state of Illinois, I said, hello, Nathan. He's a person that works for the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office in Illinois.
Right.
I had a follow-up question about the language from the CRTA. What does authorized agent mean in the context of a medical cannabis patient? I'm unable to find a definition of the term. My assumption is that authorized agent equals registered caregiver, but I didn't want to jump into any assumptions. Can you get me an official response on the authorized agent language? Additionally, could you get me clarity on the secured in the home language? Because they say any cannabis cultivated at home in excess of 30 grams must remain secured. In other words, you can have as much cannabis as you want, provided it's cultivated, provided it's secured. And I'm like, what does that mean? Does that just mean my doors have to be locked? Does it mean it has to be in a safe? What does that mean? And they responded to me and said the official answer is these terms are undefined by the CRTA, and the CRTA did not specify which state agency has jurisdiction or legal authority over home grow rules. So there is no definitive answer of what is or isn't allowed beyond some common sense practices, such as making sure cannabis is inaccessible to children and pets. Unfortunately, I can't provide any advice on what medical patients can or can't do with home grow beyond what the CRTA and medical acts say. So, yeah. Curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so it's also interesting that the wording is like that, because technically agent also just counts as a licensed employee, whether you're in cultivation like myself, you know what I mean? Even at a dispensary, you're all licensed agents.
Yeah, and I think that's the only other place that word shows up. So if I do a search of authorized agent in the law, there's just one other place, and it says, books, records, papers, and documents that are required by this article to be kept shall at all times during usual business hours of the day be subject to inspection by the department or its duly authorized agents and employees. So that word appears twice in the CRTA, and as the state said, it seems like the terms are undefined. But again, just at a blush, back to your original question, it seems like the law was intended to maybe allow somebody else grow your plants.
Which
I don't know who that person is, though.
You know, people go on vacation, so they kind of need that access to somebody else taking care of them anyways.
And that's what it seems to be. I didn't finish the sentence, I don't think. That's what this seems to be for, exactly what you just said. Attending to so this would be, or their authorized agent, attending to the residence for brief periods, such as when the qualifying patient is temporarily away from the residence. Just further proof that apparently somebody else is able to attend to your plants for brief periods of time, like when you're away on vacation.
Yeah, and truthfully, I feel like Illinois definitely needs to pull back the reins a little bit and let cultivation be a lot more free.
I totally agree. Well, I've got a video just because you mentioned cannabis was a monopoly. I think it's interesting to hear it straight from an operator's mouth, how they view the cannabis markets. Before I watch this, I just want to remind people we are live right now. Comment below and we can display your comment if you have any thoughts about what we just talked about. You can also call in at colememo.com/live. It was pretty easy to join, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's super cool, super easy. You don't have to turn on your video if you don't want to, but just want to encourage people if you want to share your thoughts to call in. You reminded me of this video, Matt, when you talked about the Illinois cannabis market. Let's watch this. This is the Green Thumb Industries CEO talking about how they look at cannabis markets.
And it means clarity on investment.
Well, let's talk about California. What are your plans for it? Because there's just so much money being made right now.
There is so much going on in California. It's the largest populated state in the country, and we are watching it. But what's very important is there's essentially an unlimited amount of licenses in California. And we are studying markets with limited license.
Right. That's why you've avoided Oregon, right? Oregon is just flooded. Right?
Exactly. We're watching limited supply where we can take an oligopolistic position and take a real market share.
Did you hear that word? Oligopolistic. I want people to look that up. They want to take an oligopolistic approach because it's not a monopoly. It's an oligopoly.
And then specifically, I feel like the company that's the worst about it, I would say, is Cresco Labs, because they advocate to arrest their competition. Not only like do they want a monopoly, they want to take out the competition through pretty much the police.
Yeah, and what are you referencing when you say that? Because I have a clip that I think I know.
Pennsylvania specifically, but
I thought that's what you might be referencing. Let's watch that clip, shall we? I've got it pulled up. I'll share my screen here in just a second. I'm getting the clip loaded. If people are wondering what we're talking about, I can't remember who this person is, but they do. I believe they do represent Cresco Labs, and I think these are the comments you were referencing.
As far as New York goes, I mean, the one thing I would recommend is make the possession of cannabis legal on the same day that you launch adult use sales, right? What we had in New York was they decriminalized cannabis, and you had 3 years essentially of illicit stores opening up because there was nothing law enforcement could do about it, right? So if you're gonna do an adult use program, the day you have the first sales, however they happen, that's the day you take the criminal off. Otherwise, you get guys selling pizzas for $100 and you get your free eighth of cannabis, right? You don't want to go down that road. It can be an absolute regulatory disaster and nightmare for law enforcement. So that's number one. Number two, start the program as quickly as possible. Again, 3 years delay just causes so many problems. Things just get worse. Inertia gets worse. You try, it's got to happen quickly. And again, but you need a strong ED. You need the right board to make that happen. So, but thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, were those the statements you were referencing?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I was inspired to repost that. Somebody, Chris Goldstein from Twitter, said big money lobbyists don't help Cresco. Cresco Labs told PA legislators during a public hearing that consumers should be arrested until the very day adult use sales begin.
And they don't, and like, remember when I was talking about a lot of those companies don't hire felons, even if your felony is cannabis? Cresco was probably the main one that I was referring to, because I went through the hiring process, got hired, and then they were like, no, because of a fucking drug felony. But then like for instance, like, GTI, they do hire felons, so I will definitely give them credit for that.
Interesting. Somebody said, so it sounds like they expect an authorized agent can shop for you at the dispensary. Again, patients who need someone to grow for them or help them grow are left out of the conversation. Good job, Illinois. That's the thing, is I think they probably meant to change. What if they were going to call caregivers authorized agents at the beginning? And they just forgot. Honestly, if you're asking me what happened there, that's what happened. They just forgot to change that in the law. because to me, when you use the word or the way that it's used in this, and I'll display it once again, it implies that somebody else can grow. And the fact that this term isn't defined is just, wild. I just muted you for a second, man. There was a little bit of background noise. You can unmute yourself, though, anytime. Genetic Memory Farm said, why are regulators and law enforcement even a part of the conversation? Cops work for us. It's an interesting question, and it's especially interesting when, let's scroll to the top of this bill that legalized cannabis. This is fun, isn't it? The first words out of the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act say, in the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime. The General Assembly finds and declares that the use of cannabis should be legal. It's the first words out of the law. In the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on the crimes that matter, violent and property crime, we, the General Assembly, find that cannabis should be legal. So, yeah, you wonder why, when you start a bill like that, law enforcement is the primary enforcement mechanism. In fact, the narrative around the hemp thing has been law enforcement doesn't have the ability to go in and shut these stores down. We need to give them that ability. It's like, wait a minute. I thought we were going to allow law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime.
So, so to add to that,
Yeah.
ISP is the largest contributor to that. They lobbied against it. 8% of the recreational tax money goes directly to them. A lot of people don't even realize that. And they also threaten to euthanize all their dogs because they smell for cannabis.
They did threaten that, and so people can look that up. Look up, well, I'll do it right now. I'll show you here in just a second. Illinois euthanize dog pot legalization. All right, let's share this. Some headlines. Whoops, I meant to share my screen. Illinois police keep pot illegal or will kill the dog. Police, oh, this is a different one. Police deny dogs will be euthanized. But yeah, there was a story for a while where this, and you can see it from New York Post as well, and theweek.com, and yeah, there was just an impression. Apparently somebody made a statement that the dogs would be euthanized if weed was legal in the run-up to some of the conversations we were having about cannabis legalization. And yeah, I will also just say really quick that Illinois State Police said in a report that you can find on thecolememo.com that they are going to be retraining their cannabis dogs following the Supreme Court ruling.
And didn't that say if you smelled like cannabis plants, that they could still search you, though?
I don't remember, to be honest. I don't remember that part.
I could be wrong, but I want to say that I heard something like that. Because working in cultivation, that would be bogus. I'd be searched, anytime I pull over, basically.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is if you smell like raw cannabis, which since you work in cultivation, you will, you'll reek of it. Yeah, you could run into issues for sure. This is the part I think. Yeah, so this page 55 of the Illinois Annual Cannabis Report, published September 30th, 2024, available on the colememo.com. I'm reading it. It says, since January 1st, 2020, which is when we legalized it, in air quotes, ISP does not imprint new ISP canines with the odor of cannabis. However, they say, ISP continues to monitor court rulings on whether cannabis imprinted canines may be sufficient to justify a probable cause search of a vehicle, which the Illinois Supreme Court just ruled raw cannabis, or the stuff you're going to smell like since you work in a cultivation, is probable cause. The Illinois State Police say if court rulings are in favor of cannabis imprinted canines, which again, they just were, for raw cannabis, the odor of cannabis could be imprinted quickly and easily onto existing canines that are not already imprinted with cannabis at little to no cost. So, and in February 2023, ISP resumed imprinting cannabis on canines assigned to the HIT, which is some squad, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. By adding a small number of cannabis imprinted canines each year, Illinois State Police is prepared to meet all the standards set by ever evolving court rulings. The dogs are back. Who let the dogs out? We're live. You can drop comments. We're probably about to close out, but if you have any comments before we go, do you have any comments, Matt, while I check out the comments that people have dropped on this subject?
No, that was about it for me. I'm just really interested to see when that bill is going to have a hearing, though. And
oh, yeah, the homegrow bill?
Yes, because I would like to go down there and speak on it.
It's weird. You never know with those things if they're going to have a hearing, but I would say I'll try to show you how to track that, because it could be a good learning experience for people that are tuning in. So if you go to thecolememo.com and look up headline, Illinois lawmaker introduces bill to expand home cultivation limits, because I may have posted more by then if you're not watching this live. Click on House Bill 3498, which is in the article, and it'll take you to the actual bill. And what you can see is that it was just filed with the clerk. Now, if it were to go to if it were to have any such sort of hearing, you'd see it here. And what I would recommend to you, Matt, before you go, is set up like a ping trip on this, or I think that's what it's called, where basically it's like something that takes visual track of a website. Do you know what I'm saying? And it'll message you if they add something to it. Because if they have a hearing, which honestly I doubt they will. I've never, like, you'll see that with the hemp stuff when it goes through committee or whatever, but I'll definitely let you know, though. Watch the just stay tuned on the show and keep following me on social media. You already know I'm going to post about that so that everybody
you're definitely up on all that.
Specifically that topic too, so that everybody can participate. And we got some more comments in. I got to give a big shout out to Brian Dombrowski. He was giving me my first donation ever. He threw some shade on one of our listeners and one of the friends of the podcast. Somebody that was recently on the podcast. He said, Miggy smokes mids. Miggy, do you want to fire back at Brian with another $5 donation? I'm just joking. You don't have to do that. Hit him back with a comment, though, if you're still watching Miggy, or feel free to call in at colememo.com/live. You can take the mic. Hit us with a mic
have
drop.
A good night, man. I'm going to jump off.
Yeah. Take care, Matt. Thanks for joining. So yeah, that person just joined the show. Super easy to do if you want to do it. I'm about to wrap up, but colememo.com/live would be happy to have anybody on here to share their thoughts. Somebody else said, don't forget to dump a thump every once in a while. I don't know what that means. It sounds like, I don't know, something dirty. But anyways, someone said, so be that we use common sense and empathy. So be that we use common sense and empathy towards patients to sell the concept that corrupt. It is the companies wanting to use the state. Yeah. Sorry, if you're listening and you're like, what the hell did you just read? Check out the video version of this podcast. If you're listening to this after the fact, I'm displaying some comments on screen as we go through this live stream. We're closing it down. Thank you for those that tuned in. We covered at the beginning of the show. Cannabis reports on sales dropping, some super interesting perspectives in that article. We talked about Michael Madigan getting charged with some things. I think they said acquitted with other things, and I don't know. Check out the show notes. I'll put all the links and just Google it yourself. I thought that news report was interesting and short, which was cool. So feel free to drop your comments or call into the show, colememo.com/live. I'm trying to think. Did you guys see that article about the president of Colombia? I'll have to report on that or like share this more in the future, but there's the president of Colombia said something to the effect of cocaine is like, what did he say? I got to find this. He said cocaine is like as harmful as whiskey or something like that. Somebody said if you're watching, hit that thumb. Yeah, smash that like button. Hit the like button. Subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Like that is super helpful. Very, very helpful. Why don't I just Google this? What am I thinking here? Like looking through notes, trying to find this article when I could just search up Colombia cocaine whiskey. I'm sure this is going to put me on some sort of list. Cool list. Everybody that's on this list is pretty fucking cool. The headline is cocaine is no worse than whiskey, would be sold like wine. Let's open up this full story here. Would be sold like wine if legalized worldwide, Colombia's president says. I thought this was just a interesting headline. Definitely look into it yourself. It looks like a lot of different people are running this story. Bogota, this is a story out of Bogota, which Bogota maybe is, I believe is how you actually pronounce it. I watched Narcos, and that's where they are in Colombia, I believe. It's been a while since I watched it, but cocaine is, quote, no worse than whiskey, end quote, and is only illegal because it comes from Latin America, said Colombian President Gustavo Petro during a live broadcast of a government meeting. I want to watch it and play it live, but he'd be speaking Spanish, and I haven't spoken any Spanish since I was in high school, which was a while ago. So Colombia is the world's biggest cocaine producer and exporter. Yeah, I've had, if you check out the show, go to colememo.com, search up Dana Larson, DANALARSEN. He's been on the show. He's from Canada. He has a coca cafe where you can buy not cocaine, but coca, the plant part, not the chemical derived or however you make cocaine. I don't know. Oh, snap. Rachel just, thank you, Rachel. Rachel dropped a $5 comment. I really appreciate it. Christopher Brady said, this reminds me of that episode of South Park where Randy went and legalized cocaine to sell with integrity. I remember that episode. That's a good episode. Good reference. But again, shout out Rachel. Thank you so much. That's our second donation ever. Really appreciate it. I just want to say, if you're not able to donate, that's absolutely fine. The best way to support the show is just by hitting that like button, subscribing, sharing with your friends, or engaging. Drop a comment, even if it's just a thumbs up or a fire emoji. I hope you're having a good night and staying warm. Yeah, I like this quote. I haven't read this full article, but I'm going to read this quote. If you want peace, you have to dismantle the business of drug trafficking. It could easily be dismantled if they legalize cocaine in the world. It would be sold like wine. Petro also pointed out that fentanyl is killing Americans and it's not made in Colombia. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You used to be able to buy good cocaine in this country. I'm stealing that joke from, I think his name is Theo Vaughn. Funny joke, but true. It's called the Iron Law of Prohibition. The harder you try to prohibit drugs, the more harmful the substances get. I was just trying to look up. I had somebody else that's involved in selling cocaine on my show in a legal sort of fashion. So Dana Larson was definitely one you can check out. I'll share this because I don't know how, I don't even think I could have said this guy's name when I had him on. Bill Paniagotopoulos. He was the CEO of Safe Drug Supply, and he was talking about like legalizing all drugs. But there's somebody else that I had on I think it was right after I had Charlie Bachtel, or right before. So Charlie Bachtel is episode 39. What is episode 38? You guys can see how I find my stuff. David Craig, yeah, coca leaf importer. So for the past 130 years, Coca-Cola has monopolized the legal importation and processing of the coca leaf. Fun fact. Harbor Solutions recently ended that monopoly, apparently. I mean, look, again, I've had Dana Larson on the show, and he's gotten coca leaf imported. The legality behind that's a little gray. This seems a little bit more clear. But yeah, just wanted to give some plugs for content I've done in the past. Definitely have sat down with some interesting people. Wanted to shout out once again Rachel Berry for dropping that super chat. Brian Dombrowski, super appreciate it. And Miggy, if you're still on, feel free to respond to Brian's smoke he threw. He says Miggy smokes mids. Genetic Farms says artisanal, handcrafted, farm to nose, Peruvian. Hell yeah. I want some coca. Like just some, like the actual plant. I don't know that I really want the powder. I would like the leaf to chew on. When Dana Larson came on the first time, he was drinking coca tea. And he was like firing on all cylinders, man. I talked to that guy for like 2 hours. Really good podcast. Go and check it out. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe so you can be notified when I go live again in the future.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st. What should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smoked cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.